Madam President, it's 6 p.m. I've started the recording.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We're going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Stridiron. I think I saw him. Yes, I did. By Mr. Stridiron.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Burton,
Present.
Dr. Henderson,
Here.
Mr. Howard,
Here.
Mr. Levinstein,
Here.
Ms. Maida,
Here.
Ms. Mineo,
Here.
Ms. Santiago, Mr. Stridiron,
Here.
and Mr. Walker.
So the first thing we have on tonight is the 2021 District Code of Conduct. Dr. Badia, who's going to be presenting that?
Dr. Roman will.
Thank you. Dr. Roman?
Good evening, Madam President, members of the Board of Education, Superintendent Roberto Padilla, and members of our senior team and the community at large. This evening, I will be sharing with you several proposed changes for the Code of Conduct for the 2020-2021 school year. Next slide, please. So every school district is responsible for updating and making any necessary revisions to the Code of Conduct. All districts have to adopt and enforce the Code of Conduct in order to maintain a safe and orderly environment for our scholars. With regards to the proposed changes this evening, if they are approved by the Board of Education, the Code of Conduct must be filed with the Commissioner of Education no later than 30 days. Next slide, please. So I would like to thank the SAVE Committee, who has been instrumental in some of the work that has been taking place with regards to the revisions that are being proposed. There are 3 revisions that I will review. The first one is the inclusion of electronic referrals, which has been added to the Code of Conduct in the remote learning environment that we are operating under. It requires us to afford any educator the opportunity to submit a referral electronically, and that's work that the technology department has been working on, and it's in place. The second is the inclusion of the words "under the influence" to 2 different offenses. Offense 18, which is the use, possession, or sale of drugs, and the second, which is offense 19, which is the use, possession, or sale of alcohol. And the inclusion of "under the influence" is being proposed to be added. And then lastly are 2 addendums, the digital etiquette, as well as the pre-K intervention supports and responses. Next slide, please. In summary, the digital etiquette incorporates 5 distinct areas. It incorporates academic dishonesty as it relates to plagiarism, cheating, and/or copyright infringements. The second is the cyberbullying and/or harassment. Third is the disruptive and/or disrespectful virtual classroom behavior. The fourth is dress code. And lastly, electronic device misuse. All of these are in addition to what's already in the Code of Conduct. So this would just support whatever language is already in the Code of Conduct. Next slide, please. And then lastly is the pre-K intervention supports and responses. The focus in this particular section is on a restorative approach, knowing that behaviors are a function have a function, whether positive or negative. And there is a focus on behavior intervention strategies and the importance of family engagement. And lastly, guidance on responses to behaviors along the continuum. Next slide, please. And that concludes this portion of the public hearing.
Board members, I don't see any hands up. Does anybody have any questions? Mrs. Burt.
So it's a question, comment. In the pre-K behavioral interventions, there is a very, very short paragraph in terms of involvement with and communication with families. And I'm just wondering, it seems as if a pre-K is 4 years old. They're coming to school maybe for the first time in some cases. And to put all of this ownership on a pre-K teacher seems like it's a lot. And I would like to see more work with families if that's possible, because these same babies end up going back to the homes. And so whatever behavior has been learned up until then, they're going back to it. So I don't understand why there's just that little bit involving parents. I don't even know what that means in terms of that paragraph that's there.
Dr. Roman.
Yeah, so in response to the family and community engagement piece, previously there was no mention of pre-K, and so the SAFE committee really thought it was important to put forth some guidance in terms of supporting our pre-K educators. The focus, it really is on restorative practices, and what we really need to do is loop in our family and community engagement team to be able to work with our families hand in hand to really help support the work that needs to happen in school as well as at home. And so that's work that we I've noted and we will certainly pursue.
Board members, any other questions or comments? Mrs. Moriarty.
Thank you. I also just want to reiterate that family engagement is a natural part of pre-kindergarten. Pre-K program includes family and family engagement and family involvement at all levels. We do realize that it's an integral part of the success of the student and of the family. So I just want to reassure everyone that it is an integral part of the program.
Any other? Oh, Mr. Levenstein.
Yeah, I would like to point out family engagement is an important part for all our grades. And in addition to pre-K, which this is what we're adding to an item that we didn't have before, but the family engagement part is drastic, and especially in these times for all grades. Thank you.
Mrs. Burton, I see your hand.
So I appreciate the comments, and I just want to reiterate that restorative practices, I understand it, but what I'm seeing here is nothing that is explicit in terms of how parents will be involved. And if that includes parents being getting some training and very, in terms of restorative practices, I'm just saying I would like to see it here so that it's clear with a pre-K teacher that they're, and I'm not suggesting they're not out there alone, but what I am suggesting is that I would like to see the district have it in writing in terms of their responsibility to, starting with these babies, and at 4 years old coming to this school, that those parents are going to be worked with in terms of whatever those interventions are, because this is the beginning. I think we all know this is the beginning. And if the parents are on board right from the beginning, they'll be hopefully on board throughout their entire school time with the Newburgh School District.
Mr. Howard? Mr. Howard, you're muted, please.
I'm sorry, Madam President. Not to be the dead horse, but I also agree family is critical involvement at all phases of what we do. And I've had a conversation in the past, and I will continue to say this, but there is a population out here that we don't have parental engagement, and we know it. And I've always said from day one, the lack of a support system in the household should not be an excuse for a child not to get everything that they need and that they desire. So I guess what I'm saying is those families that we can't connect to, we have to find a way to get into those households, to get those children the support systems that they will need for the next 12 years to navigate this Newburgh and Lawrence City School District system. Because we got to remember, there are families out here where there is no support system in that household, but that's not a reason for us not to try to find other means to engage.
So thank you, Mrs. Burton and Mr. Howard, because that's really critical. It's key. But my question is the code of conduct the place? This needs to be stated, but is this the place? Could I call on Dr. Padilla or Mr. Forget to help me out, to help me decide whether this is the place to put? Gentlemen?
Yeah, Madam President, I call some of what you just shared, and it might just be my bandwidth, but can you just repeat that, please?
Sure. I'm not sure that I agree with what Mr. Howard and Mrs. Burton are saying, and it's key, it's critical. Having been a building leader, parent involvement is absolutely critical from pre-K on. So is this the place to insert this, or is there another place that this should be? Because this is the code of conduct.
Yeah, and you're absolutely correct. I think the points being made by both board member Ms. Burton and Mr. Howard are extremely valid. I also agree with those sentiments. I think there might be a place in the very beginning of the document that just speaks to philosophical beliefs, where we can emphasize, why we believe parent engagement, community engagement is important, but it's also going to live in some other places within the actual department. So, what I'd like to do is just bring a few people from that particular department together, emphasize the comments that are being made right now, and look at ways for specifically for pre-K students, given that their age, new to the system, man, exactly what Ms. Burton was saying. They learn this from home and they're going right back to the same home. So how do we support the family? So what we'll do is we'll take a look at the beginning part of the code of conduct to see if we can just make it even more clear and double down on this form of engagement. And if that's not a possibility, given the core content of the code of conduct, then we'll make sure it lives somewhere else.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to move on. And are there any other questions before we move on? I just want to make sure. Dr. Padilla, would you like to do the Superintendent's Winter Contest winner?
Yes, I would like to. So as you know, every year we engage our scholars in some art. So whether it's the celebration of the arts or whether it is, as you see here, we invite scholars from all across the district to consider a winter card for selection that we use to do a number of things. One, we use to send out invitations for the celebration of the arts. And we also use the cards to just send to employees and community members, wishing them a happy holidays. So Ms. Linda Keach is our Director of Fine and Performing Arts. and she's been assisting us in spearheading this initiative. So I want to thank her. I want to thank all the teachers and certainly the students who put forward submissions. Ms. Keish, are you able to say a few words?
Sure, I certainly will. Thank you so much. And thank you all so much for including the Fine and Performing Arts Department in your meeting. As Dr. Padilla said, we have a very special fine arts scholar with us this evening. And just so that you know, we are planning an amazing virtual celebration of the arts that will feature the entire department this year, and it's aptly entitled The Show Must Go On. So just stay tuned for more information on that. We'll be doing that on February 24th. And tonight we feature our winner for the 7th annual Superintendent's Winter Card Contest. She's a 5th grade student at Temple Hill, and her teacher is Miss Juliana Ferreira, and her piece is entitled Cozy Holiday. And it's hard to see in this picture, but it's actually a mixed media piece. It's not a flat picture. It's pretty cool. Her winning entry will be posted on the district's website following this meeting, and she'll hold up her certificate. She's joined us as well. So please welcome and join me in congratulating Camilla Leal.
Thank you.
Can you share
Camilla?
with us quickly what was your inspiration for this amazing piece of art?
Like I sometimes pictures of houses and videos of cozy cabins, and I really like how it looks, and it reminds me of winter a lot. So I made my own little room with a chimney and tree and the couch.
Yeah, I tell you what, if you know, I think your title for this is so appropriate because looking at it, it definitely does look cozy. And thank you, Camila. We're so proud of you. Thank you for submitting your thoughts in this this piece of art. And as Ms. Key said, we're going to put it on the website. And this is something that you could be very proud of because we're going to make actual winter cards out of this design.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Have a great night. We miss you. We love you. We can't wait to see you again. Okay.
Nice job, Camilla. Have a great evening.
You too. Bye.
Congratulations.
Because we have Mrs. Una Miller and Mr. David Brown with us at this moment, and I know that Mrs. Miller has 2 little kids at home, I'd like to make a change in the agenda and move her up to before the executive session. So Dr. Padilla, would you like to do the introduction?
Yes, I will. So we are joined this evening by our director and principal, as Ms. Manel just indicated, and something new that we're doing this year as part of the initiative connected to our school transformation office. We are trying to bring forward to the Board of Education some very important instructional details as to the work that is taking place in our neediest schools. Now, I need to preface this because although it's a needy school by the definition of New York State and the accountability system, we are more than impressed and encouraged with the faculty and staff there and the school leadership in the direction that the school's been taking over the last several years. I don't know this for sure, but if we were to have had all the accountability systems in place last year, I would bet that GAMS would be one of our newest schools in good standing. Now, unfortunately, I can't say that officially because of everything that's taken place, but I am saying it in recognition of the hard work Principal Miller and the rest of the faculty and staff that have engaged in. And we're confident if they continue to stay focused and be extremely intentional in their decisions, they will in fact be one of our new schools in good standing. So Mr. Brown, Ms. Miller, I'll turn it over to you guys to share with the Board of Education this evening your SEP and why you're moving in this direction.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Padilla. Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, senior staff, and community members who are joining us tonight. This year's SEP is really a continuation of the work that we've been doing for the past few years at GAMS to establish systems to support student achievement school-wide. We've been working hard to establish more global systems, and now we're in a place where we can focus on common expectations and consistent practices in each classroom at GAMS that will result in student success. So next slide, please, so we can look at our 5 goals in our SEP this year. Before I get into it, I'd just like to say that we have an outstanding school leadership team who is really focused and driven and taking the lead within the school on this work. And as Dr. Padilla mentioned, we have an outstanding staff who is also really focused on the 5 goals, regardless of the setting for learning this year and with whatever kind of comes at them as we go through this pandemic. So our 5 areas of focus are attendance, tracking academic interventions in the classroom, continuing with our SEL program, the zones of regulation, and then parent communication and family teacher partnership, which I think really echoes a lot of the conversation that I just heard around the code of conduct. Next slide, please. So our first goal in our SEP is around improved attendance, and we've been doing really intensive work around attendance over the past few years. But as the SLT met in the spring and in the summer and did our root cause analysis, we tried to go a little bit deeper with why we were still struggling with some of our chronic absentees and with students just coming to school regularly. And what we noticed in our root cause analysis is that our attendance recognition was really focused on perfection, which is great, but is not attainable for so many students. So we were leaving out many students who have good attendance and those who are making improvements. We also noticed that our recognition was really whole class rather than individualized, and that the systems we had in place were school-wide and school level, but not classroom-based. So our hope is that with an established system in place that is really student-driven and at the classroom level, recognizing not just perfect attendance, but good and improved attendance as well, we will see an increase in our average daily attendance scores. And we all know that improved attendance results in improved achievement. Next slide, please. And Mr. Brown, feel free to chime in if you want to at any point. David Brown has been so helpful in keeping our SLT focused and helping us to drive this work. So our second goal is really around teaching and learning and around tracking academic interventions in the classroom with classroom teachers, not necessarily with our amazing academic specialists, but understanding that every classroom teacher is an academic specialist. So in our root cause analysis, we saw that we had kind of inconsistent professional development around digging into data and taking next steps with data. We have tons of data to work with, but what are we doing with that? And how are we using that to really target the interventions for individual students in the classroom? We also found that as a school, we were very focused around training around specific resources and not really digging into just general good practice, regardless of the resources that we had. So with tracking these academic interventions and using a standard intervention tracker with all of our classroom teachers at GAMS, our hope is that by June, we'll be reducing significantly the number of students in Tier 3 as identified by our iReady reading scores. And all teachers will be developing this practice to offer really targeted instruction and interventions for all students in their classroom based exactly on what they need. Next slide, please. Our third goal is around Tenet 5, which is social emotional learning, and continuing some work that we started last year around the zones of regulation. Last year, we introduced the zones of regulation because we noticed that students were really struggling to regulate their own behaviors and identify their own feelings and identify tools to address maybe some of those feelings and those moods and behaviors that aren't appropriate in the classroom setting. So because that rollout was interrupted by the closure, we didn't see great success with the zones in that students were able to use the language, but they weren't necessarily able to identify and apply throughout the day beyond our specific SEL block. And the language and the tools of the zones weren't embedded throughout the day and common throughout the school. So we hope that by June, with a more complete rollout of the zones of regulation and embedding it throughout the student's day and supporting our teachers with more professional development, we're hoping that we will see a reduction in our discipline referrals, and we certainly have in this setting so far. And then when students are able to get themselves into the green zone, which is the language that we use when we're ready to learn, they're ready to feel good about themselves and about school, and they'll have improved academic success. Next slide, please. So goal 4 and goal 5 are very much tied together because they're around parent communication from the school and from teachers and partnership between parents and families. So what we noticed with goal 4 was that teacher communication with families at GAMS was very inconsistent from classroom to classroom. And we didn't have explicit school-wide expectations for teachers and family outreach. So we hope that by June, establishing consistent communication regarding academic progress will result in increased parent and teacher satisfaction as measured by our DITSD survey. Next slide, please. And our final goal is family and teacher partnership. What we noticed in our root cause analysis was that there was inconsistent communication from the school regarding how families can partner with their teachers to support academics. And we had a lot of barriers to communication, including incorrect contact information, language barriers, and inconsistent family access to technology and phones. So our hope is that by June, increased communication via multiple platforms will result in increased family support and involvement as measured by our DITSD survey. And regular communication and partnership between families is so critical to student academic success now more than ever. So goals 4 and 5, we're hoping will both really help our teachers and our parents to get on the same page to support students. All right, and I look forward to updating you all on the progress that we're making at GAMS. As Dr. Padilla said, I'm confident that we're definitely on the right track.
Board members, any questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Levenstein.
Thank you, Ms. Mineo. So, Ms. Miller, thank you. That was an excellent presentation. But I think the question that I have maybe for Mr. Forget or Mr. Brown is we've seen a couple of these plans, these sub-plans by different schools. Do all the schools seem to have the same issues? Is it similar problems? Maybe a different approach, but a similar difficulties or things, root causes that need to be overcome?
So I'll take that one. Just like our students, each school is unique. So they really have unique needs and unique challenges. There are some similarities between schools. The survey data that's done yearly shows that bullying or the impression of bullying is very common throughout the schools. And then there are also certain subgroups that continue to struggle across the various schools. But really, when each school has done their root cause analysis, they are uncovering specific challenges unique to each building.
Thank you.
Mr. Howard, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam President. Ms. Miller, very aggressive, very concise set plan. I'm really excited about it. But So you did mention something that's definitely a common theme throughout our district, and it's the family engagement. And everybody's trying to push for that, and I'm happy for that as a board member, because I truly am a believer that we really need to kick up our family engagement portion of what we do in our district. So if you could possibly, or Mr. Brown, if you can possibly share with the board some of the extra interventions that you will be using to get through to those families that are outside of the normal contact zone that we use, and those families where those kids are furthest away from the table because of the lack of parent involvement. Can you share with us some of the interventions that you might be using to get to that population?
Sure. I think one of the big aha moments for our SLT was realizing what we want as a school from families and what expectations we have for them. You know, it's not running a bake sale. It's getting their children to come to school on time every day, and we'll take care of the rest, right? So in this setting, it's really been all about the platforms for communication because we have other barriers in place this year. So we've established a website, the GAMS Family Hub, that provides family with all kinds of different information, including monthly instructional updates by grade created by the teachers, and ways that very simple, straightforward ways in layman's terms that families can support the learning at home, whether it's YouTube videos on, you know, how to add fractions because we don't all remember how to do that, you know, and then all the way to the SEL support with using the common language of the zones at home as well. We also have straightforward right on the homepage links to update your contact information in Infinite Campus or with registration, really trying to make it a one-stop shop, as well as a contact form, which has been used, especially at the beginning of the year when families had a lot of questions about bus routes and things like that, and that they can use, you know, 24 hours a day. Similarly, using the Seesaw platform for K through 2 and the Class Dojo platform for communication in 3 through 5, those have really been game changers, not only because they have translation features right there, but because parents can message teachers at any time, and then teachers obviously respond the next day if they're getting a message overnight, but it makes the communication so much easier. And in our surveys that we've done with families so far this year, we've found that Dojo and Seesaw are the preferred methods. You don't need an email address, really, you just need a phone. And we've also actually found that now that students have the one-to-one devices, that's taken a barrier away that we had in previous years, right? Because there's internet access now in almost every home and a device that parents can use too to get a hold of teachers. But we certainly, I mean, all that being said, we certainly have a long way to go to engage a lot of that population that you're speaking of, Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Ms. Miller.
Mm-hmm. Mrs. Burton, I saw your hand was up. Do you have something you would like to add?
I put my hand down because of a couple of, seems like questions were being asked, but Ms. Miller, I just want to just say, you know, that was just wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Board members, anybody else? Mrs. Miller, thank you very much. I liked that you combined keeping your eye on the academics as well as including family and community, because they are a big part in helping GAMS grow and get stronger and get better and better. So thank you, and thank you very much for presenting.
Oh, thank you so much.
Dr. Padilla, that's the end of our things before executive session.
Yep.
So we're going to move on to executive session. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session for the following purpose: matter made confidential under FERPA employment history of particular individuals, matters leading to the employment of individuals, and to obtain advice from legal counsel. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second that.
See you in exec.
Wait, we have the vote.
Excuse me. Mr. Roll call.
Dr. Henderson? Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein?
Yes.
Miss Maida?
Yes.
Miss Mineo?
Yes.
Miss Santiago? Mr. Stridiron?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Miss Burton?
Yes.
Now, see you in exec.
We're ready to go whenever you are, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. Welcome back, everyone. I'm going to turn this over to our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Padilla.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Board Trustees. I'm very excited to kick off my section. Actually, half my section's already done. But I'm excited because 3.1 reflects a very significant milestone that our district achieved very recently. And so just on behalf of the Board of Education, on behalf of our 12,000 students, our faculty and staff, we just send a heartfelt thank you, a deep appreciation to our food service team, and just the real hard work that they've been engaged in since this pandemic started in order to make sure that our families didn't go without food during this entire time. And so in honor of the work that they've been doing, the district prepared a video. So I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, this is the first time this has happened to me. I don't have the ability to share, and I'm not sure why. Okay, just plan B. Mr. McCoy, I'm gonna send you the video. Just give me a second. It's coming your way. And then I'll figure out why I can't share. Mr. McCoy, I just emailed you.
Okay.
What is going on here? All right, I think I figured out what was going on. So let's try it again.
This has been a complete change of what we have ever done for our kids. We have been able to turn a program that served thousands of kids inside of school every day to thousands of kids outside of school every day. We are so proud to have met this major milestone because it means that we have been able to provide nutrition and support to the children and families of our community. Over the past 9 months, we have completely changed our operation, and we continue to learn and change things each week so we can do a little better every time. The work is not easy, and it can be physically exhausting, but all of that work comes with the great reward of the smiling faces and waves through car windows on distribution day. I'm so grateful for the food service staff who have stepped up to this challenge in an effort to serve our students. I would also like to say a big thank you to district security, buildings and grounds, and the many administrators and board members that have been there to support the program each week.
Thank you, Newburgh School Meals. 1 million meals? That's amazing.
Thank you for our food, mental health.
Buenas noches. This is Karen Mejia, City of Newburgh Council member. I wanted to take the time to say thank you, thank you, thank you to the Newburgh School Meals Program. Here we are 9 months later, 1 million meals served with love from your heart to our family's heart. Thank you so much. It has been an unprecedented year, and I'm so thankful that we have you guys. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Gabriel Savito, and first, I would like to thank you, all the people who make the food, like the cafeteria ladies and the people who distribute them.
1 million meals served. That's what our Newburgh Schools Meals Program has done. Thank you, Mrs. Caitlin Lazarski, cafeteria managers, food service staff, security monitors, and all of those who help. Great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you for all those who work in the food service division. You have not only served over 1 million meals in these last few months, but you have also provided hope to all the families and children who are in need during these most difficult times. Thank you for the work that you do day after day, year after year, serving children of our families and our community. It is greatly appreciated, and you don't hear it enough.
To all of our food service workers, AP Shust here. I want to give you big thank yous and great props for your 1 millionth meal given out this week. 1 million meals, that's crazy ridiculous. That got me thinking. 1 million meals, if you social distance everybody that got a meal, that line would go from Newburgh all the way to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. That's some crazy stuff. And then I was also thinking, 1 million meals. You could do a sellout at Yankee Stadium 21 times. And granted, you couldn't do that at Citi Field because the Mets are, well, whatever. 21 sellouts at Yankee Stadium. And while we're here, we do actually have to give a shout out to the 8,333 cows that donated over 8 million ounces of milk to make sure that the bags were nutritionally complete. So seriously, want to thank all of you. You guys are some of the nicest, hardest working people that I know. 1 million meals is quite an accomplishment, not only for you, but for our community and our school district. And we just want to give you a big thank you. You guys are awesome. 1 million meals.
So there you have it, the 1 million meals celebration. And just thank you to those who gave kind words, just to express a heartfelt thank you. And I think that's exactly what our entire community needed to hear. Just a big thank you for everyone who was involved in making sure that was successful. So, Madam President, I'm gonna move on to 3.2. And again, I know how happy you are and how appreciative you are of the team and the work they did around the 1 million meals. Item 3.2 is around Operation Reopen, and this is our regular update. So I'm just gonna share my screen. It should work this time. Okay, so this is the December 15th edition of Operation Reopen. And these are the key updates regarding the reopening status of the school district. I want to quickly draw attention to, given that this is the first winter session that we're in during this pandemic, we wanted to take every opportunity possible to provide some additional academic supports to students who may need them. And so this is what we have to offer at this present moment: our Early Learning Winter Academy, various academic interventions, and additional support for those involved in our My Brother's Keeper initiative. We're going to monitor the success of this Winter Institute and consider other opportunities when we come back from New Year's. So whether that be after school, weekends, and any additional breaks that we have along the way, just to make sure that we're providing the additional supports necessary. And I think we're all in agreement, the pandemic has impacted families in various ways. And so we just want to make sure those who have been largely impacted that they get the academic support they need in order to catch up. Just as a reminder, it is our goal to transition back to an in-person hybrid model. And so this slide is simply just a reminder to make it clear to those who maybe just might be following us tonight and wanting to know some of the key updates. But we expect at this point to be fully in person January 19th in a hybrid model, pre-K through 12. This is the first time in the school year that our 8th graders, our 11th graders, and 12th graders will have an opportunity to be in person. Right now we have 2 cohorts, a blue cohort Monday, Tuesday, and a gold cohort Thursday, Friday. We are exploring, in addition to our exceptional learners and our English language learners, if there are other opportunities to provide 4 days of in-person instruction. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we're up against. So our current model, just as a refresher, we offered families an opportunity for the first semester only, if they wanted, to be fully remote. And we currently are at 51% of our families being in a 100% remote model, leaving 49% of scholars to be divided among the blue and gold cohorts. That has worked for some children and not worked for others. And so it's pretty obvious, and it should be obvious, that not all things work for all people, that you have to adapt, you have to modify. And that's exactly what we're looking to do. So we know that there are some scholars that are flourishing more now than they ever have before. And we know there are scholars who are flourishing now who have also flourished in person. We also know the opposite to be very true. There are many students at this point who are completely struggling in the remote model. We've begun our analysis work of the first quarter secondary report cards and are in the process of finalizing our analysis for the first trimester elementary report cards. And again, the data that we have supports the two positions that I just stated, that, you know, this pandemic has created environments where some kids are excelling while others are not. Now, I've had the benefit of having a consistent teacher advisory council, as well as student town halls. And certain consistent behaviors continue to surface, such as students not having their cameras on when we have been explicitly clear that everyone is to have their camera on: administrators, teachers, and students. And I'm getting a lot of concerning feedback that teachers are asking students to turn their cameras on and students are not responding, which naturally would leave anyone to wonder, is the student actually there? Is the student actually participating? Students are being called on and no answer. And in some cases, students are being called on, they're answering, but still don't turn their camera on. And turning the camera on is important because we need to make sure you are there, you're present, and you're fully engaged in the work at hand. And then in addition to not having cameras turned on, teachers are very concerned because that's who they are. They love and they care and they want to make sure students are safe and getting the material, but it's concerning when they're getting little participation. So when you couple this, you know, these data together, it only naturally leaves us to have to consider some very difficult choices moving forward. And let me just preface this. These are difficult choices. However, no final decision has been made as of yet. As of today, no final decision has been made on the status of the second semester. However, we do need to consider some things given our current data. And so here are some considerations. Maybe for some students who have demonstrated the ability to manage in this new environment, maybe we continue to offer them the 100% remote model. We do believe at this point that there are children who are currently in the 100% remote model that need to come in person. Now, we've heard this from teachers, we've heard this from parents, and we've even heard this from students, that they recognize they're struggling and they want to be in person. We're just at a point where we now may require particular children to come in person. And if you're wondering, some of this, yes, has to do with their academic performance, but this also has to do with the fact that there are children who are high performing academically, but need to come in for interaction with teachers and their peers. And so they're even requesting to come in person. And then the last consideration makes sense to a lot of people, and that is require everyone to transition back to a hybrid model for the second semester, which means children will be placed in a blue cohort or a gold cohort where they will be required to come in person 2 days a week. And the 100% remote model would not be on the table. These are the things we're considering. I'm sure some more might surface, but again, we have an obligation to react to the data that we have. And right now, it's clear. There are some achieving and there are some not achieving. And there are valid reasons why children would or wouldn't. And that's not what this is really about at this point. There are things just outside of our control. And what we need to figure out at this point is how to get children on track, how to get children in person who desperately need it, whether or not they're high performing or not. So we will discuss more of this at an upcoming parent virtual town hall, right now scheduled for Wednesday, January 6th at 5 p.m. That's a Wednesday again. And this will be an opportunity to share ideas and considerations with families. And again, to the families that are watching right now, I completely understand that maybe what I just shared, you might be very much in support of or not. And I fully recognize that. And that's why I preface this, that we have some tough decisions to make. But please understand, whether you're someone who believes in some of the considerations that were just shared or not, our focus must continue to be the safety of our children and their education. And whatever adjustments we need to make in order to set them up for success is exactly what we plan to do. Just a quick update on vaccinations. As you can see here, Public Health Law 2164 requires that all children who attend public schools be vaccinated. And so they have extended, and what's been happening over the first semester of the school year is they've been extending, the state has been extending the deadline for the vaccinations every 30 days, and they recently just did that again. So we have an extension through January 10th, 2021. Now, just in case you're wondering, let me also just say this does not include the new vaccination for COVID-19. These are all the other required vaccinations that children needed to have in order to physically attend school. I do not know what the outcome of the COVID-19 vaccination is at this point, although the good news is that it's been, it's rolling out throughout the country, and we encourage people to participate. So Newburgh School District and the Newburgh community, including the city of Newburgh, the town of Newburgh, and the town of New Windsor, are currently in the yellow zone, and we've been in the yellow zone now for a few weeks. So as you can see here by the bullets, one of the biggest changes recently announced is that no matter the zone, schools are not required to close, and that is a big change. You can see here the percent of required testing for each of the zones and the window in which the testing must occur. And then what is consistent regardless of the zone is that faculty and staff and students are the three bodies, the three stakeholder groups that must be tested. So again, those are the differences as it stands today. And yes, this has been something that has changed a few times based on new data. So schools not being required to close, the percent who needs to get tested remains the same. But part of what this presentation, I hope, communicates tonight is what's critical in order for us to bring students back, in order to support students in the ways they're asking us to support them. And that means we need schools open and we need people present. So as you can see, again, we're in the yellow zone, and I have to just thank the Department of Health as well as the Horizon Medical Group. I need to thank Mr. Forget, Dr. Roman, and Ms. Pasalos just on their phenomenal collaboration in helping the district get to this point where we are now, where we have a partnership in place to assist the district in getting the testing done. But we need your help. And in order to increase confidence in our schools, in order to make sure that our district remains healthy enough to have people in, we need to make sure that we have consents in place. So we are going to be in this upcoming town hall, as well as communicating to our faculty and staff information regarding the testing, so that way they feel comfortable participating. Now, January 19th is a very important day for us for a number of reasons. One, we get to bring our children back in person. It also means we also need to begin testing. So if we remain in the yellow zone, you can tell from the information in the previous slide what's required of us. If for whatever reason we escalate to an orange or yellow, then obviously the testing continues with different parameters. So again, we need people to consent. We need to be ready to go. And at this point, we are very much on the right track and should be ready well in advance of the 19th in order to begin the testing. As always, just continue to do your part, be responsible to yourself and those around you to make sure you keep your mask on and wear it properly. Madam President, I'll conclude the presentation at this point and take any questions.
Board members, any questions or comments? Mr. Levinstein.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So just couple of questions on the testing. So you're going to have parental consent for every student to get tested?
Georgia, do you want to, I just got to grab my charger.
Yes, Mr. Levenstein, we're required to test within each school as a separate entity. We have to test 20% of the student population, 20% of the faculty, teachers, and administrators. In order for us to test the students, we do need consent from the parent. We have to keep rotating through until we build up to the 20% student population for testing. We are required to have consent.
Okay, so part of that question is if we have to test 20% of the students, does that mean every single student gets tested every 5th day, once a week, or we're going to bypass?
It's 20% over a 2-week period. It will be 10% each week. It will be randomly selected. As we do the randomization and selection of students, we'll verify whether we have consent. If we don't have consent, we'll move to the next student that was randomly selected.
So, okay, so you kind of answered my point. If someone doesn't have a consent form, they're never going to get tested because we'll find someone else to test in their place. Is that true?
That is the way I interpret it.
Thank you.
Which is why Dr. Padilla made it and stressed that it's really critical in order for us to have a healthy environment to increase the amount of testing that we can do to ensure the safety of all individuals within that school.
I agree with both of you 100%. Thank you.
Board members, any other questions or comments? Dr. Padilla, I see no more hands.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, and we'll continue to keep you up to date as the district moves forward in this environment. I'm going to turn it over now to 3.1. This is a transportation study update, and Dr. Spindler and Ms. Coyne are going to take us through this critical update.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Padilla. So the district has been conducting a study of the transportation system for the past year, and I'm going to present some of the work that we've done. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the study was to explore options for starting schools later. And we also wanted to look at the transportation system as a whole and explore how efficient and effective it is currently and what we can do to optimize our on-time delivery and ensure a sustainable system over time. Next slide. A committee was created to review the items with the stakeholders in the district, and that committee met multiple times to prepare the course of the evaluation that we did. We wanted to see how we could start the schools later in the day, and we also looked at the way the buses were tiered and the amount of time allotted in between the schools for the buses to complete those bus routes. We created several possible scenarios to change the bell times and the tiered system of busing. We looked to increase the on-time arrival of the buses, especially in the afternoon. And in February, we began working with Decision Support Group and Mr. Thomas Platt to assist us with our analysis, and he did a thorough analysis and presented to the Board of Ed, and then we proceeded on with our work. Next slide. So Decision Support Group identified some areas of focus in order to increase the effectiveness of the transportation system. He determined that our system is efficient, but could be more effective. The buses, first of all, to the NFA campuses are running separately for Main and North, although the schools are located very close geographically. Our elementary school buses travel over the entire district, creating longer bus routes for some of those buses. The HHM students, exceptional learners, and public transportation consume a disproportionate amount of resources. And this is the case when we have a small number of students in a bus that travels over a longer distance. The PM resources, we need many more buses in the afternoon, and the time crunch is definitely more, it is more shorter time in the afternoon than in the morning for us to complete bus routes. Next slide. So decision support group was able to determine that any efficiency that any changes that we make to our system will mostly affect the in-district bus time, the bus runs in district. And changing the bell times will affect 2/3 of the cost base, but will not affect the transportation that we do outside of the district. We are working to try to arrive on time at schools, and we use okay, we got to go back.
Yeah, you have to go back one slide.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So there is an imbalance between the afternoon and the morning, and we want to try to change that. Multiple contractors that we have, because we do have the way the contracts are set up, one bus company may be assigned to a school, and that can affect the way that the tiers are arranged. Okay, next slide. All right. The study done by Decision Support Group identified several ways we can change our transportation to be more effective. First of all, if we combine the NFA Main and NFA North buses, then we can utilize those buses more effectively, and also start those schools later in the morning by staggering their start time. We were thinking about 10 minutes at this time, where we could drop off at NFA Main first, and then NFA North using the same buses. We also believe that we can change the zones for the elementary schools and have shorter bus times for them, and establish a more on-time system for those schools. We also want to look at creating more centralized pickups for our private and parochial out-of-district transportation. Okay. So the choice of the elementary schools impacts our transportation. Although most of the students, most of the families choose the school that's in their neighborhood, the ones that don't have a longer bus route, longer bus time on the bus. We understand that having the choice is important to some of the families, and looking at our current data, we were able to create some zones that would shorten the bus route for the students, but still allow a choice for the families. We had to keep in mind things like the capacity of the schools, blend the race and ethnicities of the students in each school zone, and still allow the choice for schools. Next slide. So we made several scenarios in order to combine things, but you could see right now at this point that the geographic location for the students in 8 out of the 9 elementary schools, the scholars live within 4 miles of the school they attend. That's the orange bar there on the right, the left graph. When we look at the data of the scholars living within 3 miles of the school, we can see that the schools located in the more densely populated areas have the closer scholars. So in the graph on the right, it's split out by municipality, so you can see each school and the municipality that the students live in. Next slide. Okay. So here is the proposal for the new zones. There are 3 elementary schools in each zone. The zone 1 is outlined in the bold red there, and it includes Horizons on Hudson, Bombville, and Fostertown School. And the zone 2 is the green outline, which is Gidney Avenue, Gardnertown, and Meadow Hill School. And the 3rd zone is outlined in blue with Vales Gate, Temple Hill, and New Windsor School. Each of the school zones starts in the city and works its way outward towards the edge of the district. Okay, next slide. So part of the process of creating those zones was to get a blend of ethnicity in the schools and keep our schools diverse as they are now. So this graph here shows our current demographic makeup of each zone and the proposed demographic makeup. And as you can see, it's pretty closely matched. We were able to get a good blend of diversity in each school zone. Okay, next slide. Okay, so moving forward, we were going to look to revise the bus routes for NFA Main and NFA North to include the later start time, as well as the staggered start time to be able to put the students from both schools on one bus. We'll create the centralized pickup locations for the out-of-district private and parochial schools, and we'll create bus routes for the new elementary zones with a focus on the arrival times and the time allotted between the tiers. And after that work is completed, we'll have a better picture of any cost savings that we have and improved effectiveness in our transportation system. Okay, any questions?
Board members, any questions or comments? I have a couple.
Okay.
You're muted.
I'm going to unmute myself because I need to go back to the page in my thing. Okay. On the zones, I have a real problem with the way Gidney Avenue School is blocked in. I can't figure out whether it's in zone 1 or zone 3. And then if it's in zone 1, then students around it, or if it's in zone 3, students around that school cannot take the opportunity to walk to that building and be part of its community. And having worked there for a while, I know that the community right around Gidney Avenue is a really nice group of people that want to be part of the school, and they're very active in their school community. So I really have a problem with that zoning that way. I also think we need to be careful, and we need to be very careful about our city kids and using them as pawns and moving them from place to place. I particularly don't like that, to be able to send them to zone 3 or zone 1 or zone 2 and without having parents make the decision of where to send their kids. I find that a little bit tough for me. And third, on the next page where you have race and ethnicity by school zone, I do not like charts that are not similar. The first chart, the top line is 60%. The other two charts, the top line is 80%. And when you're showing people charts, they should be the same chart so we can look at and fairly understand how this is impacting our kids. So this chart really needs to be redone, and you need to have the same axis on the right side that goes from 0 to 80% or 0 to 60%, but make it consistent. And it's not. And so it's not giving me any information that I'd like to see at an instant. So I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Mr. Levenstein.
Thank you, Ms. Mineo. So the transportation study that was done was excellent and thorough. And their point about the bell schedule and starting times, that's designed to have better educational outcomes. And I certainly think that's a good way to proceed. And also it was designed for some lower cost structures. In reference to the zones, I kind of feel like you, Ms. Mineo, that particular study only looked at zones, I believe, based on cost savings, period. not educational outcomes. So a couple of points in addition to yours is drawing those lines the way it is. Someone may live closer to a school in a different zone, but not be able to go to that school because it is in a different zone, even though they're closer than the furthest one within theirs. That's number one. And number two, showing demographics of the zone will not tell us what the demographics of an individual building will be. So that's another thing to look at, unless you're going to, in addition to say you can only go to these 3 schools, if you're a certain ethnicity, you can only go to this one. So I don't think that transportation study really went beyond cost savings for zones, and I think it needs a lot more to be looked into for that. But the other recommendations seem pretty easy to accept. Thank you.
Board members, any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those questions and comments. We'll continue to plug away at this with the goal of having a more efficient, effective transportation system in order to save resources that we can repurpose to support children academically. So Madam President, that concludes, nope, I'm sorry, I got one more. Newburgh Free Library recognition. And someone's already beating me to it, so go ahead. Chuck, congratulations on your upcoming retirement. Thank you for all the work that you've done and your leadership in the Newburgh community to make our library as strong as it is today. And we just wish you the very best in your retirement and ask you to just continue to stay connected and stay as involved as you have been. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Padilla. May I say a couple of words?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I want to thank the school district staff, all 2,000 members, and the school board have been wonderful and supportive of the library. We have a very unique arrangement here, and one of 2 public libraries in the state of New York that are under the auspices of the school district, and it's turning into a really supportive, cooperative. We work together to find a way of students, entire community. By working together collaboratively, we can enjoy the best of all. And with our students outside of the normal realm of the library, we're working together to serve our community through this pandemic. And it's a really exciting time. So I want to thank the district, and I want to thank the entire library community, of the Newburgh Free Library, the staff of the Newburgh Library, and everyone for the support they've given me over the years. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and I will be around.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Thank you for all that you've done for us and for the success of our library in this community. Thank you so much, and congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you, Chuck.
Board members, anybody else?
Congratulations.
Chuck, I love you. It's Ramona. And I'll
Yes,
see.
thank you.
It's been a real pleasure, a real one. Thank you.
I have a feeling he's not going too far. Oh. Thank you again, Chuck, and congratulations. Madam President, that concludes my items.
Thank you. And again, congratulations, Chuck. We're going to move on to public comments on agenda items. Mr. McCoy?
There was no public comment submitted on agenda or non-agenda items, Madam President.
Thank you. We're going to go back and do something we haven't done in a while. We're going to have committee reports. So please, less than 2 minutes. Curriculum and Instruction Committee, Mrs. Maida.
Thank you, Madam President. Our curriculum meeting was on December 2nd. We discussed some new course offerings, which you'll see on the agenda for NFA, work experience program, Spanish multicultural course. So we're looking forward to introducing that. We had a very brief or very good discussion about the Winter Academy to help our most needy students. And we had several presentations, including social studies and Ms. Keach with performing arts. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to Exceptional Learners Committee, Mrs. Burton.
Good afternoon. Good evening. Thank you, Madam President. So on our last Exceptional Learners Committee meeting, we talked about the integration of access and equity and student support services. So we've kind of combined all of those entities into exceptional learners, student support services, access and equity. Dr. Roman, he shared a lot more around our multiple tier student support system. And he also gave us updates around the specially designed instruction practices for exceptional learners. We had a good discussion around SEL, social and emotional learning. We looked at some of the outcome data. There has been a SEL, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes, an SEL, survey, that's my word, SEL survey that was administered to schools. So that's going to be coming in, that data, so that we can effectively measure the impact of the SEL interventions that are happening in the schools. So each building will end up with an SEL score. And I think that was it. We talked a lot and had a lot of questions about that. And we talked a little bit about the different SEL frameworks and models that are happening throughout the schools and school district. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. Would you like to continue and do the library committee for Mr. Stradion?
Oh, he's not here? Okay, I can do that as well. Let me get my notes. So with the library, hold on, let me just grab my notes where they are. So with the library, we went over the circulation and tech department numbers. And there was a comparison between last year, October of last year and October of this year. And really the significant difference was in our overall circulation. So like October 29 this time, 12,000, 2020, 1,400. So we can contribute that to no people in the buildings, right? Because of the COVID, The library was closed in November. Colleges have been closed. But overall, the collection and new book borrowers are pretty much on par of last year, even through this COVID. Let's see, adult programs. We had about over 700 people attended programs and also viewed via Facebook and YouTube. So biggest programs were, adult programs were, believe it or not, Intro to Computer Science in Spanish, almost 300 people. Bake a Turkey Pot Pie. And then we have a large, a really good turnout when it comes to curbside services. And then we had about 50 people who joined in with a 10 Signs of Alzheimer's workshop. There was a clean update. Position has been posted, a cleaner's position has been posted. The reopening plan for the library now has new hours. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturdays, 9 to 5, Monday, Thursday, 9 to 8, closed on Sundays in Newburgh and in the town, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Fridays, 11 to 6, Wednesdays, 11 to 7. Library space design, the planning is still ongoing so that we will be prepared for to request funds when they come available from the state. And Harriet Tubman Committee, Harriet left on this Monday, 12/14. A group of us came together on Sunday and bid her farewell. That's the Harriet Tubman statue out in front of the library building. Her great niece was due to come, great niece, believe it or not, of Harriet. She was scheduled to come a couple of weeks back, but we had to cancel because of the COVID yellow zone response. So, and then in terms of a book club, FACES and the Social Studies Department has joined the Harriet team in terms of providing a book club. And so upcoming will be Bridge Talks. And if you want to spend some time looking at a documentary of Harriet Tubman, it is available for view. And that'll be all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. We're going to move on to our policy committee, Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Madam President. At our last policy committee meeting, we had an agenda which started out with a policy review through an equity lens, which will be forthcoming in the next month or two back to the committee and ultimately will come to the entire board for its acceptance. Also coming up in the board, under the board president section, there is a group of changes of policy numbers from old numbers to new numbers, deleting the old, and then we're in the continuous process of updating our policy manual. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. We're going to move on to buildings and grounds, Mr. Levinstein.
Thank you, Madam President. So the Building and Grounds Committee met December 9th, and we discussed with Mr. Velez, New York State Education Department's mandated building survey condition and the NFA North Elevator repair update. We also discussed with Mr. Ramjug approved capital project change orders and allowances for the pool project. We reviewed, discussed, and moved forward 3 resolutions that are on tonight's finance agenda. The first being a required archaeological study where the new CT building will be. The second is a professional food service design consultant for the CTE's Culinary Arts Lab, cafe space, and athletics center concession. And the third is a professional theatrical design consultant for the stage renovations at Heritage and Vales Gate. And we also discussed the energy performance contract, including solar panels and planned changes to the EPC. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to audit and finance, Mrs. Santiago.
Thank you, Madam President. We actually met just before this meeting. We met at 5 o'clock today, and the items that we discussed are actually on today's agenda. So I'm just going to be brief today. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll do personnel. Every discussion that we had on personnel is on today's agenda, so I'm not going to be redundant. We always have a good meeting in personnel. So that's the end of the committee meetings. I'm going to move on to my section. For your consideration, I have items 6.1 through 6.22. Policy was very busy. Would any member like to separate out any of these items? I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved, Madam President.
Second.
Questions or discussion on any? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson.
Yes.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our Deputy Superintendent, Mr. Forget.
Thank you, Madam President. I have one item this evening. It is a resolution to approve the revised 2020-2021 district calendar.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion on this item? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
That concludes my item, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Forget. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum, Elementary, Mrs. Moriarty.
Thank you, Madam President. Elementary curriculum instruction has 2 consent agenda items this evening for your consideration.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my items this evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Moriarty. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent Curriculum, Secondary, Mr. Bayer.
Thank you, Madam President. Curriculum Instruction Secondary has 6 items on the consent agenda for the board's consideration.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yeah.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida.
Yes.
Mr. Bear, are you done?
Sorry, that concludes my items this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Bear. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Student Support Services, Dr. Roman.
Thank you, Madam President. This evening for the board's consideration, I have 2 items under the agenda.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Santiago,
Yeah.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo.
Yes.
That concludes my items. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Roman. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent of Finance, Dr. Spindler.
Thank you, Madam President. Finance presents items 11.1 through 11.14 as a consent agenda for your consideration.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items?
Yes, Madam President, I'd like to separate 11.8, please.
Okay. I'd like to entertain a motion, please, on everything but item 11.8.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion on those items? Roll call on those items, please.
Mr. Walker,
Yeah.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago.
Yes.
Let's move on to item 11.8. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Mr. Howard?
Yes, Madam President. So I've in the past I've always spoke up to this item, this situation here when we are declaring books and equipment surplus obsolete. I was curious in this time of early literacy being so important in communities of underserved populations and different organizations within the community. Have we ever reached out to these different groups to see if they would want some old books? Because early literacy is about reading, and kids just having books to read in their library is such a big plus. And I was just curious, instead of just selling the books or giving them to something online or how we go in this process, have we reached out to any of the community-based organizations and asked them what they want or would they have a need for any of these books?
Dr. Spindler?
The legal might be able to assist me with this as well, but it's my understanding that we can't offer it to the other communities. They can view our public agenda items, and in the event that an organization was to reach out to us, we can set something up if they were interested in these items. But I can't go to individual different community members and specifically solicit them these items. And I don't know if legal can help me more to answer that, but that's my understanding.
Can I say something?
Sure, Ms. May.
Okay. You have a policy on the disposal of obsolete items, including books, and you are required to follow that policy. If it's been demonstrated that there's absolutely no value whatsoever to these items, then you can give them to your local groups. But until you've determined that they have absolutely no value, and you're required to get the most for whatever it is.
Okay,
Mr.
so
Howard?
yes, Madam President, if I could just ask a question. So when we say value, what do we actually get for the sale of obsolete books? I mean, are we talking about a minimal amount of money? Or are we talking about a large amount of money? Because if it's a small amount of money, I think that giving of the books or searching out groups that can use these books would benefit them more than a few dollars would benefit what we're bringing back to the district for obsolete books.
Can I suggest something? That we take
Sure.
a look at the policy at the policy committee meeting.
Okay, we'll do that.
Thank you. That's a great suggestion.
Please try again.
Oh. Okay, is that you, Mr. Howard? We have a motion on the floor, so I'd like any more questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
Mrs. Santiago, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, Madam President, I'd like to walk on an item to tonight's agenda.
Mr. McCoy, could you read us the item, please? And then we'll vote to add it to the agenda
Yes,
or
ma'am.
have a resolution.
Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Newburgh Enlarged City School District authorizes the law firm Shaw, Pearlson, May, and Lambert LLP to commence litigation in New York State Supreme Court for the County of Orange against the Mount Vernon Central School Districts and the East Rockaway Union Free School District, seeking to recoup foster student tuition payment pursuant to New York State Education Law 3202-4A for student ID number 234470 for the period from 3/12/2019 through December 5th, 2019. And be it further resolved that such services shall be compensated in accordance with the terms of the retainer agreement for the 2021 school year by and between Shaw, Pearlson, May, and Lambert and the school district.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion to add this to the agenda, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Questions or discussion on adding? Roll call, Mr. Clerk, to add.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton.
Yes.
So now we have a motion. I'd like to entertain this motion, please.
So move.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson.
Yes.
That concludes my items for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Spindler. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Mr. McLemore.
Thank you, Madam President. On the Human Resources agenda, I have items 12.1 through 12.10 for your consideration on tonight.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So move.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call. Oh, Mrs. Santiago, go ahead.
Thank you. I just have a brief question on item 12.6. I was just wondering, do we know how many people have shown interest so far?
May I speak, Madam President?
Yes.
Yes, at this,
Mrs. Moriarty.
thank you. At this point, we have 108 kindergarten and first grade students interested.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yeah.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
That concludes my items, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLemore. We're going to move on to the Clerk of the Board, Mr. McCoy.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the approval of the minutes from the November 24th, 2020 board meeting.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So move.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yeah.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein.
Yes.
That concludes my items, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. As there are no public comments on non-agenda items, we're going to move on. So before we adjourn the meeting, on behalf of the Board of Education, I'd like to wish everyone a happy and safe holiday and a joyous new year, hoping that 2021 is better than 2020. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn, please.
So move, Madam President.
Second.
Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes, and thank you.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes, and happy holidays, everyone.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes, I want us to say Happy Hanukkah, Happy Merry Christmas, and Happy Kwanzaa to all.
Mr. Levenstein,
Yes, and happy holidays to all.
Ms. Maida.
Yes, and happy holidays and happy new year.